All right, welcome back to another episode of the Boardroom. I'm excited today. Today I have with me Jose Berlanga. You want to take just a few seconds, short kind of intro of yourself, and then we can kind of get into our conversation.
Absolutely. How are you, Chris? It is great to be here with you. And yeah, I'll give you a brief. It's always hard for me to summarize it. As a matter of fact, I'm celebrating in a few weeks. I guess it will be my 40th anniversary as an entrepreneur. I
Wow, that's
started
great.
my entrepreneur journey exactly 40 years ago, which feels like it was just yesterday. In some ways, it's been a very, very long, tedious, exciting, but painful journey in many ways. And out of those 40 years, we won't get in all the industries that I've been involved with. Many industries, many different companies in different sectors, but the last close to 30 years now have been in the real estate sector. Originally, as a single family builder in residential, let's call them transitional neighborhoods in the inner city. Our concept began because, as you know, when highways started being developed, the infrastructure in the country, everybody fled to the suburbs. And subsequently, all the inner cities became forgotten during the 60s, 70s, 80s, and up until the 90s, that a new wave of not only construction but desirability, people began to want to come back to the inner city, the lifestyle. New restaurants, hip places, bars, pubs, clubs, you name it.
Yeah, right.
And this migration began, and we were the beneficiaries of timing. We didn't know it at the time, but we were some of the early pioneers in beginning this process of rebuilding the inner city. And we started very small with a tiny investment, one little bungalow here in a neighborhood called Houston Heights. And we little by little started growing very aggressively, very intensely, with many years of effort, turned into a pretty decent size, one of the largest builders in Houston at the time. And one thing led to another, and here I am, close to 30 years later, still in real estate. So
Well, that's great.
there you have it.
And I did want to bring up an author of a few books too. The latest being Dirt Rich.
Yes, yes. I began this new phase, this new stage of teaching. I do some teaching, some training, some continuing education, writing. I was telling you about my third book, which is hopefully being published soon. The second one, which is more relevant to the conversation. Well, the first one too. The first one is the business of home building, which is how to build a company, not how to build homes, but how to build a business that
Yes.
builds the homes. How to scale, essentially, how to start, how to build a sustainable business. And the second one, which is Dirt Rich, is about land investing, land speculating, something that I hold very near to me because that was the heart of our operation, was finding land, how to locate it, how to determine whether it was a good piece of land to build. And that's where that book came about. It was a collection, compilation of experiences and recommendations and do's and don'ts.
So I think what I'd actually like to start with was maybe pull from your expertise from that first book, right? The business of home building. There is, in my experience, which was we started about a decade ago, it's so the barrier of entry is very low to get into a business like this, whether it be flipping or if you're going to try to get into the home building business. The
Yeah.
problem is I would never discourage anybody from getting into the business, never, because I think it's one of the greatest decisions we made. But I would caution people that they make it seem, especially if you go to these like free seminars, they make it seem so easy and everything's going to be just smooth sailing for the next 40 years, right? Which I'm sure was your experience, right? Uh,
It
so,
was quite the opposite. It was close to a nightmare, but we made it. Yeah.
so I think the question I have from that would be, what would be the caution for somebody getting into it to do it, with a strong foundation and do it correctly?
And that is so true. I actually I talk about this a lot. This is one of the easiest businesses to get in and the hardest to remain in it.
Yeah.
It's under appreciated. People think that it's much easier than it truly is. And I talk about that in my first book. We don't respect the construction business, flipping, whether it's new construction or just investing or buying a property for an investment and renting it. Everybody thinks they can do it. I've seen numbers, staggering numbers of professionals smarter than I am with degrees, doctors, attorneys, and all kinds of professionals, high level executives that get in because they think that, hey, if I can do what I do, that I can do that with my eyes closed. It's a completely different craft, a
Yeah.
completely different set of rules and know-how and skills. And not everybody has them. I don't care how brilliant you are. It takes a lot of other things, which are determination, patience, tenacity, willingness to put up with pain, many hours, and so it's a lot of sacrifice, and people don't understand that. I feel like you. I get annoyed by everyone who makes it seem like one, two, three, and you'll make a bunch of money. That's a lie. That is incorrect. It doesn't work that way. There are more chances of losing
Yeah.
your money if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. And we're guilty of it. My wife and I, when we got in, we were students of YouTube University, and we got into it thinking we knew how to do everything because we watched the 20-minute video, right? And there's two sides of that, right? There's taking action, which some people also hesitate with, which we have no problem with, but it's taking the right action all these years later. Like that's what we're teaching people. If we can shorten the curve for other people, I think that's really important because these waves of seminars and these things just to get people in to make a couple of bucks aren't going to stop. So I feel like if we do it right and we learn how to do it right, it's our responsibility to kind of pay that forward.
Yeah. No, and it's almost. I'm with you. I think in a way, all of the fame that because my industry wasn't that popular when I started. It
Yeah.
wasn't chic, it wasn't cool, it wasn't innovative. Um, Now everybody wants to flip, invest, build, develop, broker. And these TV shows, for example, make it seem like in 30 days I'm gonna make X number of dollars. And it gets a lot of people in trouble. My recommendation, like you, is not to discourage people, but to provide them the right information and create the proper expectations of how this business is. Most people go in unprepared because they assume that it's much easier than it is. And it's far from it. Most people fail because I always say that as long as there are no budgets or time restraints, anybody can build anything, anybody can flip anything. But
Yeah.
the moment you are talking about money and timing and schedules, now it's for the pros. Now it's a whole nother game. And you may get lucky once or twice if the economy and the industry is on an upswing at that moment, it hides a lot of these problems. But to be a sustainable business, it requires a lot more.
So when you started and you said when you started you were doing home building, you were doing building brand new houses. So these bungalows you were buying were new.
We were buying teardowns,
Okay.
older homes, teardowns essentially, or warehouses, or either commercial, whatever type of property in some of these neighborhoods that had good locations. They didn't feel right. It was very speculative because they weren't pretty neighborhoods. But little by little, we started, bringing them back, restoring them, renovating them, and cleaning up little pockets at a time, and try to buy, land value, and that's where the know-how was. But we didn't make money right away. This is something that also I talk about. It took us several years before we actually turned a profit. So
Yeah, I
it,
was gonna. That was kind of my follow up to that. Is did you get into that thinking or wanting to build that big business, or is that something you kind of learned along the way?
no, we grew this business. It was collateral damage of something else.
Okay.
Most people get into this industry to make money, and they end up with a lot of problems and no money. But if you get in it for the right reasons, you have better chances to sustain the difficult days, the tough days ahead of you. For example, in our case, my brother is an architect, and he always wanted to build homes. And I was an entrepreneur from before, so we teamed up to build this first home
Okay.
with no intentions of making money. Our mentality was, let's learn it. We're not coming in for the money to make a killing. We're not here to show everybody how to, how to run the industry. We came in very humble with a small amount of money, very careful, with the understanding, with the awareness that we were going in to learn, not to make a killing.
Yeah.
And that's why we stuck around, because that wasn't, obviously we all want to make a profit. We need to make a profit to remain in business, to build a sustainable business. But that wasn't the initial purpose. And that one is that we needed to eventually, but we didn't go in saying, we're going to make a bunch of money. And that leads to a number of subjects that we won't have to get into, but a lot of people start spending that money and utilizing their draws and getting in trouble because they assume they're going to make money right away. And they're unprepared. They're unprepared to weather the storm and to live off of their savings and have other means instead of having to depend on a project that they're barely learning how to figure out.
Yeah, which is extremely easy to do in this business because you're getting into, whether you're flipping or building, you're getting into it thinking you're going to get this profit back on the sale. And even if you come in under budget and you know you're going to list it at this certain price, doesn't mean that something happens in the inspection phase, and it doesn't mean that you're going to get the price you ask for. So pre-spending that profit is just that is a trap I see people get into, and I cringe when I see it.
Yeah. It's definitely a tough business, and most people learn the hard way. I see more people coming in and out, even with deep pockets. At some point, they realize that it is not what they think, and it's all fun and games when it's booming, And even then, it has its obstacles. Finding the right deals gets harder because there are more people after them. So there are always hiccups when times are booming. It's hard to compete. There are too many players. It is hard to find land, the right piece of property, and when times are tough, it's difficult to sell. It's hard to find a buyer. So there
Yeah,
are always hiccups in this business.
sure, absolutely. So after building this, and then I know from that book, your next book was the Dirt Rich one. What what was it? Was it a transition into land for you, or was it a supplement?
No, no. It was a supplement. It was a spin-off of the areas of the business where I invested the bulk of my time. I had the blessing of not having to worry about the technical aspects because my brother it was an expert in that field on building homes, designing homes. The technical, the artistic, and the operational side, we complemented each other. I was the entrepreneurial side, the numbers, the financing, the engineering of growth. And in the first book, I wrote a lot about the running and building of the business. But in the meantime, I started investing and becoming very passionate about finding the next project and the next project and understanding trends, what to buy, where to buy, why to buy it, what to put on it, what is it going to sell for, what kind of product, in identifying all of those aspects. And that's why I wrote that second book. I just needed to
Yeah.
put it down on paper, having done it so many times for so many years.
So I'd like to ask kind of a selfish question because it was an experience of ours. When it pertains to land, where you said studying, what to put there or what you can or cannot put there, like the research that has to go into a piece of land. Just like houses, we have also run into pieces of land that just seem like you can't do anything with, which in our industry, in the real estate investing industry, a lot of people are coming to you with problems, whether it be financial, life situations, whatever that looks like. In this one particular case, we had a piece of land that I'm sure was inherited at some point in this guy's family's life, and it was a decent sized piece of land. It was about 6 acres, I think, and when he had first called us, this was my first introduction to anybody calling about land without a house on it. And where it sits now, I don't know what it was like in the past because the area that we live in has built up over the years, like I'm sure many have. The land sits in this triangle, and on one side of it, it's paralleled by the turnpike, and on the other side, it's paralleled by a main road that crosses over the turnpike. And then the only true access by the road is an off ramp from the turnpike, which is really odd space if you can picture what that looks like in a triangle. So
Yeah.
when he reached out to us, we always want to at least divert him in a place where somebody can help him out. And that was one that we could never figure out. Like, where would you start with something like that?
But he wasn't landlocked. I mean, there was some access to a street.
There's some access, yeah.
And how wide was that access?
So literally the way this triangle down where the streets meet is probably 5 feet. And then at the biggest part of the triangle would have been probably 2 acres. So it was a pretty big piece of land when it triangled out.
But the access where it connects to the public right of way was about 5 feet, just or
I
was
see.
it
Where you actually get the access was right in the middle. So let's say an acre wide.
okay? Because really, the one question that I get asked very often is how to appraise, how to value a piece of property, how
I was
much
gonna
per
get
acre,
there.
how much per foot, and it doesn't quite. The numbers are done backwards, the other way around. First of all, you need to understand the shape of the property, and create a site plan.
Hmm.
What can you fit comfortably according to what your legal authority, local authorities are going to allow, and then your engineer needs to create a layout so that you can propose it. So you're going to have to create the streets, whether it's a 28-foot street, your private easements, your amenities, and all of that. And that's why my question is there enough entryway to your property, to this property from the public right of way? What is a frontage? Perhaps, in other words, how
Okay,
much
I see.
frontage is there? Is there enough on that triangle for you to build a nice street with a nice entrance?
I would say yes, which I find this being a fascinating answer because where I said, I don't think that we can help you out, this is like an unusable piece of land, you would look at that differently.
I think every piece of land is usable, assuming that it's not zoned to something specific. So let's assume there's no zoning, and assuming that you have access, you're going to need a minimum, depending on whatever area of the city you are, or county. They're going to tell you how wide the entrance needs to be,
Okay.
and how busy the street is. In order to maybe you need a 2-lane entrance, maybe you need one entrance and another exit because of the size of the development and the number of homes. So it's on a case by case. When we look at a property like this, we have to talk to the local authorities to understand what are the requirements. Because if you're facing a very busy street, for example, for fire department, for code, for utilities, for maintenance, they may need a second access, and maybe you don't have space.
Yeah.
So then you have to reduce. It's still usable, but now you have to reduce the number of lots.
Okay.
So if this is a 6-acre, this will dictate how many lots you can put per acre, and how many pieces of land you can split it into, according to your requirements. And of course, there's another number of lists. You need to find out, first of all, if it's allowed. Second of all, where are the closest utilities? Is there water, sewer, electrical, cable, or how close are they? And if they're not, how wide is the street? What is the right of way on the street that you are connecting to? Otherwise, you may have to either rebuild the street, do a dedication, which is provide a piece of your land in order for you to widen it. And once you have all those ingredients, if there's no water or sewer, you may have to build it up to your property. So these are all the questions that we try to work on and investigate during the feasibility period. If someone already owns it, it gives them an advantage, which is they have time.
Yeah.
A lot of times you put a property under contract and you're very limited
Hmm.
in the number of days you have to do all of these investigations, because you don't always get answers right away.
Right.
You need to speak to public entities. It might take a while for you to get the right answer, and even longer to get it approved. So
Yeah. Right.
sometimes
Right.
people want to know whether you're closing in 30, 45 days, 60 days, and you don't have the answer, so you have to walk away. But if you own it, I mean, you can work on this for quite a while.
Sure. Absolutely. I like that, and yeah, and you're right. When the expectation is set with the houses, are so much easier because if you're going to close in 30 or 45 days after doing so many of them, we can almost breeze by a house and know what it needs. So that's not an issue for us. There are so
Yeah.
many unforeseens when it comes to land. I think that that I heard you just explaining to me that the questions I wouldn't think to ask.
No, no, no. We have, I mean, we've done this so much, so many times. We have long checklists of how from wetlands, from soil samples. We drill for a number of reasons, from environmental reasons. We do tree surveys just to kind of give us an idea of how much is going to take us, how much money is going to take us to clear the property, and the discharge permits. Some of these properties are big enough where it makes sense to build your own mud, your
Yeah,
municipal utility district, and that's a very big investment. But those are great investments because you get reimbursements from the county. So it starts getting, the bigger the property and the less developed the area, the more complicated it gets. That's a rule of thumb. Most of our experiences are in developing. We're not, I mean, we do develop land, but most of our activities are redeveloping already existing streets. So all we're doing is replatting,
yeah,
variances, and things of that nature, changing the purpose of these entitlements. But it's on areas where there's already a reasonable amount of infrastructure. So it makes it a
okay.
lot easier.
So that makes me think of something. There's a portion of our audience that, uh, well, I should say most of our audience are new or newer investors, whether it be on the real estate side. Well, it's all real estate, whether it be on the house building side, flipping side, or some recently have turned to land as a main strategy. So I would ask you if somebody's getting into this as a strategy and just a little bit of context, if they're marketing to landowners, it's just people that have land and maybe the margins are a certain size land, but all of the questions that you would need answered aren't answered on that initial marketing piece. We're just looking for landowners. So as we get contacted by landowners, what are some cautions, I guess I would say, of getting into that as a main strategy? Because you're not necessarily, do you understand the question I'm trying to ask? You're not
As a
necessarily
buyer.
going after one specific kind of piece of land.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it has to be attractive. There has to be a market. And the first question I ask is, what can this land turn into? If I don't have a purpose, if I don't have an exit strategy, the question becomes irrelevant. If somebody offers me a piece of land in the middle of nowhere that I see no use in the near future other than for farming, that's not my business. I don't get involved unless I, want a ranch. All right.
Yeah.
But assuming that investors who own land are approaching you, which we have that every day, we categorize them. Is this in an area that we like? And the whole process begins by saying, what do I want to build in this area? What can sell or rent in this particular property, and for how much? That's the first question. Is this appropriate for commercial, for a retail, for a warehouse, for industrial? What is this land? What's the end game? If I cannot figure it out, it's time to walk away. If I don't see the proper utilization for a piece of land, we don't even consider it. If it's not within our model or strategy, whether it's mixed use, whether it's some townhomes, whether it's a mid-rise or a mixed use. Once you determine that, Now you start running your numbers. You run some preliminary numbers for, and again, the numbers, I keep saying this over and over in a lot of my classes and interviews, because everybody wants to start with what should I pay and what is this per foot. No, it's not that. That is the last number. The first number is what can I sell? What can I rent and how much can I get as the income? And then I can start backtracking. All right, so then I can afford this product that needs to contain these amenities, and this is what it's going to cost me. And whatever's left is what I can allocate to the land portion. So that's how I appraise land, by first determining what the product is going to cost me altogether, and then assigning a number to land. Within that number, obviously, I have to play with my horizontal expenses, the horizontal development, which is all of the some properties are more developed than others because again they already have access to utilities. So it's just a matter of connecting to an existing infrastructure. So I have to find out what those expenses are going to be, from impact fees to my permitting, my designs, clearing, demolishing, permits, so on and so forth. There's a list for those. But if I'm going to develop, in other words, create a community from scratch, that's a whole nother set of numbers. I have to build the streets, paving.
Yeah, right.
I have to build the common areas. I have to do engineering. I have to build perhaps a detention pond, gate the community, fences, landscaping, so that we have another set of, not only list of a checklist, let's call it, but also budget items.
Yeah.
Once you do those, now you start determining whether this piece of property makes sense. So it's got to be in an area that you think people want to either live in or shop at or have some sort of purpose. And if you want one last one, if you want a long-term investment, that's okay too. If you don't have a short-term, then try to make sure that the land is covered. What we call a covered land play, which is you buy something, but somebody's paying rent enough to cover the note and enough to cover property taxes, so that you have time to play with and determine what the best and highest use for the property is. But buying something with no income just in a speculative manner, you have to know what it's for.
Right. What I like about that, and thank you for that answer, because I've asked this question myself in the past, but I'm asked this by others. If I get a piece of land, how do I know what to pay for it? Right. And it sounds like there's a little bit more flexibility on that side, meaning if I have a house that I'm sitting in front of that I want to make an offer on, I got to figure out what I can sell the house for, how much work does it need, money wise, and once I take my expenses off and I build a profit in, this is what I can pay for the house. That's it. What I hear from, if I'm hearing that correctly on your side, if you're looking at a piece of land, you may want to put 10 houses on the land, but if your expenses start adding up, you may be able to bump that back to 8 houses to make it work. It doesn't mean you can't buy that piece of land. It just means you have to manipulate the numbers a little bit, which is I think an advantage to looking at something like that versus a house, just one solo house.
Correct. And new builders, new flippers, new investors ask the wrong question. They normally do their numbers. What am I paying? What am I going to spend to refurbish this property? Oh, okay, so this is what I need to rent it for. As if we could determine that. And we cannot. We don't run the market. So you have to first look at the comps, figure out what you can rent the property for, and then you figure out what you need to spend, not the other way around. Right. So I often see this, builders like, oh, this is what I spend, so this is what I have to sell it for. No, you don't sell it for what you want. You sell it for what the market bears, for what the market allows you to sell it. So you should have done it the other way around. First, look at comps. And thankfully, in most of these markets, there are enough comps. There is enough information out there for us to see, to have a pretty close indication as to what we should be able to get for a property, whether it's for sale or for rent.
Yeah. just put that logic in any other industry, and it doesn't make any sense. Like if I bought a car for 20,000 and wanted to sell it to you for 25 because I need to turn a profit, it just doesn't work that way.
Right. Nothing in our industry makes sense. You wouldn't, and I mentioned that in my book. You wouldn't one day just wake up and say, you know, I'm gonna build my car. I'm gonna go build myself make myself a few suits and some ties just for my belt for fun. No, nobody thinks that. However, everybody goes, you know, I'm gonna build my own home, as if it ironically is a much more complex, much more difficult, much riskier, much more expensive proposition than for you to try to make yourself your own tie or your own
Right.
shirt. Yet, a lot of people attempt it.
But so combine all of your prior experience and all of the business that you've had. The first time that you tried, let's just set, because I know there's multiple things that you've done. Let's just start at the beginning of your real estate journey. What's something that maybe with your first deal or your first year in the business, a lesson that you've learned that still carries strong today, all these years later?
Well, that this market changes overnight. It doesn't give you any warning. You can't chase a market if whatever one of my quotes is, whatever decision we make today, whether it's to buy a property and flip it or a piece of land to build a home, we won't know for a year or two if it was a good decision or not.
Hmm.
So whatever you buy and sell with your numbers, there are still projections. In our business, you don't know if you made the right choice until the market shows you what it is when you finish the product. There are times in the industry when I wish I would have had more product, more homes available on the market, or higher price point because the lower price point slowed down, or vice versa. I had a lot of multi-million-dollar homes and the lower market all of a sudden started taking off and it boomed. You don't know what you don't know until it happens. And that was one of my lessons. Perfect your craft and stop chasing markets and try to be all things to all people. But I just learned an endless number of things. I could list them. But, you know, this is a very cash intensive business. This is something else. I learned a lot about leverage, about how to
Yeah.
borrow, how much to borrow, about reserves, how much to keep, how much to hold, how not to over leverage, and also that in this industry, if you want to scale, and I'm just giving you a few random ones that come to
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
out of many hundreds and perhaps thousands of lessons that I've learned from every size. Uh, you have to be ready to reinvest if you want to scale. This is not a type of industry where you make some money and you take it home and go party and live it up. Whatever dollar you make, you have to dump it right back into the next deal, in the next cycle. And if you make two, and now you want to build, you put it back and you put it back. I've been very wealthy on paper several times, very wealthy on
Sure. Yeah.
paper, but I wasn't able to access that capital. It was tied up in lines of credit, in equity, in properties, in land, in development, in work, in infrastructure. So you have to be ready that this is a long-term game. If you want to do it right, if you want to scale.
I'd say in this industry alone, and amazingly fast, you can get equity rich and cash poor in a record amount of time. So I 100% agree with that. Let me ask you a similar question a different way. What would you, so that those are very practical things that we can apply, the advice that you're giving. What would you tell somebody, or no, let me ask this instead. So you coach and teach students and people that come to you. What can you tell somebody that you, or yeah, what can you tell somebody that you can't teach them?
Um, I would teach, I always repeat, experience needs to start little by little. Don't try to grow too fast. This is something that I also recommend. because we think we know more than we think we do. Don't play with other people's money. This is something you don't want to learn, and I'll get to more precise answer. But if you're not an expert, don't play with people's money. Don't go and raise capital and learn on their nickel. First, start very small, play with it, work for somebody else. There are many things. This is in itself a contradiction, because I can't tell you the things that you won't learn because you won't learn them. You have to live them. So the answer would be, try to learn the industry from by working in it, by establishing yourself in the market that you like, in the market that you understand, and little by little start experiencing some of these things. Because until it's sort of very much like becoming a parent. I can give you all kinds of advice, and the problem with that type of advice, and why I'm not giving you a straight answer, is because I can
I think it's a
repeat it
great
over
answer
and
so
over.
far.
And you're not going to, you know how many parents tell me, no, 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 you need to tell your kids this, you need to raise them that way. You don't let them do that. Don't do the other. Take away the iPad. People with no children give me all kinds of advice that once they had them, I don't see them following any of them,
Yeah, right.
because now they're learning the reality of it. So I can give you a long list of recommendations, but nobody's going to listen to them. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to act on them, because they have to live them. They have to live over leverage. They have to live a shifting market. They have to live contractors walking away in the middle of a job, leaving you stranded, a bank that's having issues and not releasing draws when you need them, environmental issues or prices that come up at the end of the day, lost and stolen materials, and so on and so forth. A team member that all of a sudden wasn't able to handle the job, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. There are so many things that can go wrong. Surprises, changes in code, an
Yeah.
inspector who change your mind, you name it, it happens. The trick is to understand and be aware of the fact that there are going to be surprises, and that I need to be ready to react, to act as quickly, and to do whatever it takes at that moment to make it to the next day and to the next phase, one step at a time.
I think it's a great answer. And two of the main points I don't want to get drowned out in that is one, be respectful of other people's money. A lot of us, most of the people that I know in the industry use other people's money. So to know that is extremely important. And learn the right way is something else that you said, which is something that got us. I told you earlier that we learned on YouTube University. What got us out of that was latching on to somebody locally that we knew was doing the business. And we spent the first year of building our business just JVing projects with them. And we would leverage their time with half of our profits on anything that we made. And more than happy to do it because they were in the business for a decade plus. And we wanted to learn from somebody that was doing it, not just doing it, but doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. It's better to prove your model. I've seen a lot of new builders come in and try to build an entire development, and they've never done it before, and
Yeah.
try to raise a lot of capital and try to get into a bind in a situation that they didn't anticipate, instead of just having started very small, figured out the details, and do it again, and then practice several times. So the biggest recommendation is, don't make any assumptions. Start very small, because you're going to start creating your own checklist, your own laundry list of what to
Yeah.
look for and how to react.
We're coming up on the time here, but I want to really thank you for your time. The information and the advice that you gave in this podcast is going to help more than you know right now. A lot of my audience are new investors, newer, either just getting into it, maybe a couple deals under their belt. So they're just trying to figure out whether they want to make this into a business or not. And I think all the advice has been hands down really great.
No, I'm very glad. I'll throw one. I know we're out of time, but This will help psychologically. Don't assume that every day. Don't beat yourself up if a deal didn't make money. This is a numbers game. I've been doing this for decades, and still today, I have deals that didn't make any money.
Hmm.
So when you're doing one deal at a time, and it happened to be the one that didn't work out, it's devastating because it's the only one. Without knowing that this is a numbers game, there are going to be some transactions, some flips, some new builds in markets that somehow didn't work. It doesn't always reflect your execution. It just turned out not to be a good project or timing. Even now, I experience that. But thankfully, now we're doing multiple projects.
Yeah.
Even the big public companies. I mean, I talk to them constantly, and they go, "Hey, this subdivision is not doing well, and that one is doing great, and that one's doing all right." And so, don't assume that just because your project went well, you're you're a great developer, or vice versa. Just because it didn't work out, it doesn't make you a bad developer. You just need to continue to perfect the process and understand there's going to be bad deals here and there.
I can tell you a quick story before you finish here to your point, and it just made me think of it. We had a deal that was almost exactly what you're explaining. It was I mean, we're probably 6 months into the business and we've done two flips at this point. And it was mainly the first one we bought from a wholesaler, the second one we bought from our own marketing efforts. This third one, our realtor that we were working with found it on the MLS. And we ended up buying this property. It was bank owned and it was on a septic system. We have a lot of septic systems in our area. We're about an hour west of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. It's a lot of septics. And 6 acres, we're thinking to ourselves, we're still ignorant. We're young in the business, and we said this has to perk. We have to be able to put a new system on here somewhere. So we buy the house, we budget, we get into it, we start doing the construction, and it's all going just as smooth as the other two. When I got to kind of scoping out the septic project, they came out, they perked the land, it didn't perk, came, perked it again, didn't perk there. It almost didn't perk in this 6 acre lot, and we just took that we took that for advantage, and we had budgeted $25,000 for the septic system, which would have worked if it was just a plain take it out, put it back in again. I think we ended up paying about $75,000 for this septic system, which was way above our budget, and we didn't leave much of a profit at the end of this. So long story short, there were a couple of factors when we listed the property that were preventing it from selling it at the price that we wanted that we didn't take into account either. There was a recycling plant across the street, whole laundry list of stuff. Anyway, at the end of the day, when we sold the house, we took a loss of $40,000. Brand new. We still had W-2 jobs. We didn't have $40,000. So we negotiated with our private lender to loan us the money and pay him back, which we did in under a year. So we were proud of that. I say
Yeah.
all that by saying just to the point you were trying to make, I think, is what ended up happening. There was a blessing in disguise for us because we ended up using that property as a way to teach others on how to do this correctly. And we went to a couple of meetups in person and we presented this property with slideshow and everything and just show them these are the 15 things that we pulled out of this project that went wrong. But it's not going to stop us from doing it again. It's going to make us better, and we're going to keep on doing this. And that opened up business for us moving forward because we gave our story. People came to us afterwards. I mean, even today, that was 5 years ago. Even today, they'll say, "Well, I saw you at that meetup, and we just wanted to pick your brain for a couple of minutes." So we've gotten so much business. We think of it as a $40,000 loss when it's probably a $200,000 win.
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's how it works. At the moment, it doesn't feel like it, but in retrospect, all these problems teach you great lessons.
Absolutely. So to wrap this up, if somebody wants to get in contact with you or follow you or see any more information, how can they do that?
JoseBerlanga.com, and hopefully, Amazon. My books are on Amazon, and hopefully, you'll be seeing a lot more social media activity that I've been incredible neglecting for a very long time. So these interviews are incredibly fun, but I promise to have more videos out there pretty soon.
All right, sounds good. And in the show notes, I'll put the website And if it's okay with you, I'll put links to the books too.
All right, great.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. Great to see you.